Good evening, and welcome back to Worlds Before Morning. Tonight we are going somewhere very quiet, on purpose. A stone abbey in a river valley. 700 years ago, on a snowy night in the deep of winter, there is a wall around it, and a gate in the wall. And inside there are warm candles, and cold corridors, and bread baking slowly for the morning. It is one of the quietest places human beings have ever built. We will spend the whole night there. Before we knock at the gate, take a moment for yourself. Dim the lights, if you haven't already. Set the phone somewhere out of reach. Pull the blanket up over your shoulder. And let the bed take your whole weight, the way snow lets a wall carry it. If these quiet nights help you rest, you're welcome to subscribe, but only if it truly helps. And tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from tonight. I like reading them in the morning. All those far rooms gone dark. That's the last thing I'll ask of you. From here on, there is only the snow, the bells, and the story. And as always, if you drift off along the way, in the chapel, in the warming room, halfway down a candle-lit corridor, that is not a failure of listening. That is the story doing its work. It knows the way to morning without you. Sleep whenever sleep comes. Tonight you'll arrive at the gate as a traveler out of the snow, because that is the honest way into a place like this. You'll hear the evening service sung by candlelight, and watch the last copyist put down his pen. You'll warm your hands at the one fire the whole abbey allows itself. And past midnight, when a single bell wakes the whole house to sing in the dark, you'll understand something about these people that no book quite manages to say. Somewhere ahead of us, across the White Valley, a bell is ringing the end of the day. Let's go toward it. It is late afternoon, and you have been walking since morning. The road is a pale seam through the snow, stitched along the river, and the light is going out of the day the way warmth goes out of stone, slowly, and from the edges first. Your boots have found their rhythm. Your breath walks ahead of you in small clouds. Then the valley opens, and there it is. The abbey sits above the river on a shelf of land, long and low and gray, with a square tower at its heart, and a wall drawn around the whole of it like an arm around a shoulder. Snow lies thick on every roof line, from 3 chimneys, and only 3, smoke rises in thin, patient threads. And from the tower, just now, comes the sound you have been walking toward all day. The bell. It rings the hour called Vespers, the evening service. And the sound comes across the snow the way light comes across water, effortless and everywhere. In this whole White Valley, that bell is the clock, the calendar, and the voice. Farms for miles around plow and sup and sleep by it. You are still half a mile off, and already you are living on Abbey time. The last mile has its stations, and your feet learn them as the light fails. A wayside cross first, gray stone furred with snow on its arms, set up generations ago where a drover died in a drift, they say, so no traveler after him would pass the spot unblessed. Then the abbey's outermost farm, its byre lamplit, a dog announcing you to nobody, the smell of cattle briefly warm across the road. The farmer here is the abbey's tenant, and his grandfather was, and his grandson will be. Land moves slowly in this valley. Mostly it does not move at all. Then the ford, where the road crosses a stream under rattling ice, stepping stones swept clear by someone earlier today, because keeping the ford passable is one of the small duties the abbey pays a cottager a loaf a week to mind. You cross dry-booted on another man's diligence, which is, when you think about it, most of what civilization is. On the far bank a post carries a little roofed lantern box, dark now, lit on the worst nights as a guide. The valley has been arranging itself around travelers for a very long time. The road climbs to a gatehouse, a small stone building with a great wooden door, and in the great door, a small human-sized one. Beside it hangs an iron ring. You knock because it is what travelers do, and because within these walls there is a rule, older than the walls themselves, that a knock at the gate is never ignored. The rule says, in words the whole house knows by heart, that every stranger who comes is to be received like the most honored guest in the world, not questioned first, received first. In 700 winters of snow and dark, that rule has meant a bed and a bowl for more cold travelers than anyone has counted. Tonight it means you. The small door opens, and the porter looks out. An old man with a lantern and the unhurried eyes of someone whose whole work is this door. He takes you in at a glance, the snow on your shoulders, the miles in your face, and stands aside without a word of question. Later, there will be time for names. First, warmth. Inside the wall, the wind stops as if a hand had been laid on it, and the Abbey arranges itself around you in the dusk. The great church straight ahead, its windows just beginning to glow with candlelight from within. The long ranges of stone buildings, gathered around a hidden courtyard. A barn, a stable, a bakehouse. Everything plain, everything solid, everything speaking the same quiet language of gray stone and white snow. The porter leads you along a swept path toward the guest hall, and his lantern makes a little room of light that the two of you walk inside. There will be broth, he says after the service. There will be bread. There is always bread. He says it the way other men state the weather, as a plain fact about the world. Behind you the bell rings on, unhurried, gathering the whole valley in for the night. The bell counts the hours here, and the hours are patient. You have arrived at a place where nothing at all will be rushed, tonight or ever. They give you a place at the back of the church, in the shadows where guests and travelers stand, and from there, you watch the Abbey sing the day down. It is a tall, cold space, taller than any barn you've ever stood in, and nearly dark. What light there is comes from candles, 2 rows of them in the choir, where the monks stand facing one another across the aisle like 2 shores of a narrow river. The windows were colored glass in the daytime, pictures in red and blue that the afternoon poured through. Now, with night behind them, they have gone to black and deep violet, and the church has drawn inward around its little lights. Above the candles, the pillars go up and up into a darkness where the roof must be, taken on faith at this hour, like much else here. Then the singing begins, and it is not like other singing. No instruments, no harmony even, just voices moving together on a single line of melody, rising a little, resting, falling a little, the way ground rises and falls under a long road. One side of the choir sings a verse, the other side answers, back and forth, verse and answer, like 2 halves of one slow breath. They are singing psalms, old poems in an old language, and the same ones return night after night, week after week, year after year. A monk who lives out his life here will sing some of these verses several thousand times. The words wear smooth in the mouth like river stones. The young ones sing from memory before they fully understand, and the old ones understand more. They say, every year. Your breath shows faintly in the candlelight, and so does theirs, rising with the sound. The church is not heated. It was never meant to be. Cold here is not an enemy to be fought, but a fact to be worn. Like the wool habit, like the early hours, you pull your cloak closer and find, a little to your surprise, that you don't much mind. The singing seems to warm something the fire can't reach anyway. The voice that leads them belongs to the cantor, and the cantor is blind and has been for 11 years. It changed his singing, the brothers say, and not in the direction you would guess. He holds the pitch for the whole house now, out of the dark of his own head, and gives each psalm its opening note like a man setting a boat gently onto water. He knows the entire year's music by heart, every antiphon of every feast. And when a young monk loses his place in the dimness, it is the blind man, hearing the hesitation, who leans a little toward him and firms the line until he finds it. Light, he has been heard to say, was always the least necessary part. On the other side of the choir stand the novices, 5 of them in the stalls nearest the door, where drafts and scrutiny are both strongest. They are at every service the community keeps, learning the great wheel of the year by simply going around with it. At this hour, their singing has the particular earnestness of the young and cold. One of them, the smallest, is fighting sleep with his whole body, rising on his toes at intervals like a sentry. Every man in the senior stalls fought that same fight once, in that same stall. Nobody smiles, everybody remembers. There is one moment near the end, when the voices stop altogether, and the silence lands like snow. It lasts 3 heartbeats, maybe 4. In it you can hear the candles themselves, the faint working of flame on wick, and one cough, quickly swallowed from the far stalls. Then the voices take up the thread again, softer now, walking the melody home. Watching them, you understand that this is the real work of the house. The barns and the books and the bees all matter, but this is the trade the Abbey practices. 7 times a day, every day, forever. Some men make cloth, and some make bread. These men make, for want of a better word, quiet. They make it carefully, on schedule in all weathers. And the whole valley, though it might never say so, sleeps a little easier for knowing it is being made. The service ends without ceremony. The candles in the choir are put out 2 by 2, until only the one lamp by the altar is left burning, as it burns all night, every night, a single red-gold point keeping the whole dark church. The monks file out in silence, hoods up into the cloister. Outside, the last daylight has gone entirely, and it has begun to snow again, small dry flakes with no hurry in them. Somewhere above, in the tower, the bell keeps its own counsel now until the next hour comes. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. You are learning the rhythm of the place already, without meaning to. It is a very easy rhythm to learn. Supper is taken in the refectory, the long dining hall, and it is like no meal you have ever sat down to, because almost nobody says a word, and yet it is not silent at all. Listen, spoons in bowls, the knock of a jug set down, benches easing under men's weight, fire snapping in the one wide hearth at the hall's end, and over all of it one voice reading aloud. That is the custom of the house. While the body eats, the ears are fed too. A monk stands at a small raised desk halfway down the hall, a candle at his elbow, reading slowly from a book of old lives and old journeys, and the whole room eats to the pace of his voice. He reads for the week, then another takes his turn. It is said to be one of the harder duties, reading levelly while your own supper goes cold. Everyone takes it in course. Everyone eats a cold supper now and then. The food itself is plain and completely honest. Dark bread, dense and good, baked this morning within these walls. A thick pottage of barley and winter roots, peas and leeks, and a little dried herb, hot enough to steam your face when you lean over the bowl. A wedge of the Abbey's own cheese. Ale brewed here too, mild and brown. On feast days, there might be fish from the ponds. Tonight is no feast, and the pottage is entirely sufficient, the way plain things are when you've walked all day. Since no one speaks, the monks talk with their hands, and it is a language all its own. A circle drawn on the palm asks for bread. A little wave of the fingers, like a fish swimming, asks for fish. 2 fingers tipped against the thumb pour invisible water. It is quick and quiet and oddly courteous, and the young novices are said to gossip in it, out in the cloister, which every generation of novices believes it invented. You are seated at the guest's table by the fire, the warmest seat in the hall, because that is the rule too. The guest gets the fire. A lay brother, one of the practical men who keep the barns and bake the bread, refills your bowl without being asked, and gives you a small nod that manages, without one word, to be an entire welcome. The reading tonight is about a traveler, as it happens, a man crossing mountains long ago on some patient errand. The reader's voice is low and even, and the story moves at the speed of a man walking. You find you are chewing more slowly to match it. Everyone is. A room full of people eating at the pace of a story is a kind of peace you will not find in any inn. The bread deserves a word of its own. The wheat grew in the Abbey's own fields. In the bend of the river you walked past this afternoon. It was milled at the Abbey's own mill, proofed in the warmth of the bakehouse wall, and baked in ovens that have not fully cooled in living memory. Tomorrow's loaves are rising there now, this very moment, under cloths in the dark. A monastery is many things, but it is first of all a machine for making sure of bread. The year in this hall is a menu as much as a calendar. Advent is herring and patience. The great feasts bloom with roast fish, wheaten bread white as the cloth, honeyed fritters that the kitchen affects to produce reluctantly and plans for weeks. Lent strips the table to its bones and the community with it. 40 days of one meal and quiet stomachs, ended by an Easter dinner that 3 separate chronicles of this house describe in loving detail, while barely mentioning the attached wars. Ordinary time rolls between pottage and bread and cheese, the good gray bulk of the year. A monk of 40 years standing can tell you the season blindfolded, by supper alone, to within a fortnight. When the meal ends, it ends altogether. The reader closes the book. The benches are stepped back over. Each man carries his own bowl to the hatch, abbot and novice alike, because dishes, the rule holds, are no respecters of rank. Within a few minutes the hall is empty and wiped and dark, and only the fire is left, working through its logs for the sake of the morning. Outside the windows, the snow is falling steadily, now past the black glass. Somewhere the bell marks the hour again, one round note over the roofs. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. Supper is done, and the long, soft evening of the Abbey has begun. There is one room in the Abbey where daylight is hoarded like coin, and it sits above the cloister's east walk, facing the morning sun. The Scriptorium, the writing room. By day, a dozen desks work there in the good light. Tonight, all but one stand empty, and at that one, by special leave and a single candle, the Abbey's best copyist is finishing a page he could not bear to leave. Come stand at his shoulder. He will not mind. He hasn't noticed you, or the hour, or the cold. On the slanted desk before him lies a page of vellum, calfskin scraped and smoothed to something finer than cloth, and on the vellum, in 2 neat columns, march lines of black letters so even they look grown rather than written. He is copying a psalter, a book of the very psalms you heard sung at Vespers. He has been at this one book since the spring. His tools are laid out around him with a surgeon's tidiness. Quills from the left wing of a goose, because the left wing's curve sits better in a right hand, cut and recut through the day with a small sharp knife. Ink the color of a starless night, brewed from oak galls and iron, its recipe older than the Abbey. A stick of lead for ruling faint lines, pumice for smoothing, chalk for whitening, and all for pricking the margins. A scholar's toolkit and a craftsman's, both at once, in one worn leather roll. Watch him work a single letter. The quill touches down, draws one firm stroke, lifts, touches again. Each letter is built, not scrawled. 3 strokes, 4 strokes like tiny carpentry, and between letters his lips move faintly, keeping his place in the text the way a man hums to keep a tune. An experienced copyist does a good page a day. A careless one does too, and is made to scrape them off and start over. Under his desk, a small clay pot holds coals from the warming room fire. It is not for him. It is for the ink which thickens and sulks in the cold, and for his right hand, which he unbends over the coals between lines, slowly, like a man opening a rusted hinge. The work is beautiful, and it is also plainly labor. In the margins of old books, copyists sometimes left little sighs in small letters. "Now I have written the whole thing," one wrote. "For the love of heaven give me a drink." The vellum itself was made within these walls, and its making is a craft as proud as the writing. Down by the tannery yard stands the parchment maker's shed. Skins come to it raw and leave it as pages. They are bathed in lime for days, scraped of every trace of their first life, and stretched drum-tight on tall wooden frames. Then the parchment maker works them with a crescent-bladed knife, round and round, thinning, evening, listening. He judges by sound, they say. A skin scraped true sings one note under the blade. A skin scraped false says nothing, and goes back in the bath. The finest sheets, saved for great initials, end up thin enough to read a hand through. It takes a year to learn the knife, the old maker says, and a life to learn the listening. At the head of his unfinished page waits a great initial letter, sketched in outline and empty, like a garden bed marked out and not yet planted. Tomorrow, if the light is kind, he will fill it. There will be red from crushed insects that came from lands he cannot name, blue from a stone worth more than its weight in silver, brought, they say, across half the world, and a small square of gold leaf, thinner than breath, that will be laid down and burnished till it holds the candle flame inside it. Think what this room is doing, night after patient night. Every book in this abbey, every book in this whole valley, exists because a man sat where this man sits and copied it out, letter by letter, breath by breath. When this psalter is done, it may outlive him by 500 years. He knows that. It is why his hand is so slow, and why he could not leave this page tonight at a good stopping place. There are no unimportant lines in a book meant to outlast you, but the candle is burning down to its socket, and the rule of this house is gentle with candles and strict with men. He sets the quill in its groove, stops the ink and reads his last line over once, twice, lips moving. Then he draws a cloth over the desk, the way you would draw a blanket over a sleeper, and takes up the candle and goes. The room settles behind him into the dark. A dozen desks, 100 quills, half a library asleep in mid-sentence. Through the windows, snowlight lies faint and blue across the empty benches. Somewhere below, the bell notes the hour to nobody in particular. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. So heaven knows is a book. It can wait until morning. One member of the Abbey did not leave the Scriptorium when the copyist did, and has no intention of leaving it all night. He is white with one gray ear. He is getting old and knows better than to admit it, and he is, in the fullest and most official sense, employed here. He is the Scriptorium cat. His work is mice, and his work matters more than a visitor might guess. To a mouse, this room is a larder. Vellum is skin, and glue is boiled hide. There are bindings in this abbey with corners nibbled round, proof of what one winter of mice can do to 100 years of copying. Against that standing threat, the abbey employs exactly one officer. He is sitting on the warmest windowsill, washing his gray ear with the thoroughness of a man who has all night and knows it. He came to the abbey as a kitten in a lay brother's coat pocket, so the story goes, and assigned himself to the Scriptorium within a week. Cats understand where the important things are kept. He has his rounds, the way the porter has his, the walls, the book presses, the dark gap behind the ink shelf, and he keeps them nightly with a diligence many novices have had held up to them as an example, to their private annoyance. The monks, being men who live by rule and record, have him in the accounts. So much for the cat's fish on fast days. It is written in the cellarer's book, year after year, in among the candle wax and the parchment, one small steady expense that nobody has ever once questioned. There are abbeys, it is said, where the cat eats before some of the brothers. Nobody here confirms this. Nobody denies it either. And he has a distinguished history, this profession of his. Long ago, in another abbey on a rainy island, a monk sat late over his page just as ours did tonight. Beside him sat his white cat, hunting. And the monk, instead of copying, wrote a little poem of his own in the margin of his day, about the two of them. I hunt words, he wrote, and Panger hunts mice. Each of us happy at his own art, each of us at his trade. Neither one hinders the other. That small poem, scratched down in an idle hour, has outlived kingdoms. The monk's name is lost. The cat's name, Panger, white as milk, is remembered 1,200 years later, which would not surprise a single cat who has ever lived, and did not surprise Panger then. One assumes. Our cat has never read the poem, being far too busy living it. Just now he flows down from the windowsill without a sound, crosses the moonlit floor like a drift of smoke, and takes up his sentry post by the ink shelf, his eyes close to slits. His ears do not sleep at all. Somewhere inside the wall there is a scratch, and the ears go around like little doors turning. He will hold that post through the small hours, take his patrol along the book presses at some point known only to himself, and be found at dawn curled in the exact center of the warmest desk, as if he had never in his life done anything else. The copyist will lift him off with two hands and put him down with great respect. Every trade honors another trade well practiced. Outside, the snow keeps its slow work on the roofs. Below in the dark, the bell lets another hour go by unremarked. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. So is the white cat with one gray ear, on watch in the house of books. At the heart of the Abbey, hidden from the world by all its other buildings, lies a square of open sky. The Cloister. 4 covered walkways run around it, arch after arch after arch, and inside the arches lies a small green garden called the Garth, which tonight is not green at all. It is a perfect square of untouched snow, blue-white in the darkness, holding up its little piece of the falling night. This square is the Abbey's crossroads and its living room, its main street and its study. By day the monks pass along these walks between church and refectory and chapter house, read on the stone benches in the north walk where the sun lands, wash at the fountain before meals, and teach the novices their letters at the worn end of the west walk, where 700 years of teaching have hollowed the bench like a spoon. Now it is empty, and it is possible that it is even more itself when empty. Walk it once around slowly. Your steps are the only steps. The pillars go by at an even pace, each pair framing the white garth like a picture that is the same picture every time and somehow never tires. Snow has drifted a hand's depth over the low wall in places, curved and clean as poured cream. The only marks in the whole white square are a bird's 3-toed stitches, wandering out from the fountain, turning twice about themselves, and ending in a little flurry where the maker took wing. A wren by the size of it, or a robin about its winter errands. Its whole visit is written there complete, like one line in an enormous white page. By morning, the snow will have taken even that. At the center of the garth stands the fountain, a stone basin where water rises through a pipe from the spring above the Abbey. It has not frozen. It never quite freezes, the spring water arriving too lively for the cold to catch, and its sound threads the whole cloister night and day, a small continuous silver conversation. Monks who leave this abbey and are asked, years later, what they miss, name the fountain more often than you would think. Not the great bell, the little water. Icicles hang from the arches of the south walk in a row of clear teeth, longest where the refectory chimney warms the roof above, and the melt refreezes in the eaves. The novices are forbidden to knock them down, which is why each generation of novices becomes expert at knocking them down silently. Several lie fallen in the snow, now like dropped daggers. No one is fooled. No one, it must be said, greatly minds. Along the south walk, nearest the refectory door, runs the washing place, a long stone trough under a lead pipe pierced with a row of small holes. A dozen men can wash hands at once there before meals, standing in a line like birds at a rill. The pipe is fed from the same spring as the fountain. In hard frosts, a lay brother's first duty of the morning is to persuade it, with a kettle, to remember its vocation. Above the trough, each brother's towel hangs on his own peg, and the pegs are argued about, quietly, eternally, in the way of all assigned pegs everywhere. And in the west walk at the worn end is the school corner. The novices take their letters there, and so do the almonry boys. Village children the Abbey feeds and teaches. The bench there is hollow deepest of all, and the wall above it is scratched to shoulder height with 200 years of alphabets, initials, a boat, a peculiar horse, and one perfect small owl that nobody has ever claimed. By day, it is the noisiest corner of the quietest place in the valley. Tonight the snowlight lies across the empty bench, and the owl keeps watch over the alphabets alone. Stand still a moment in the northeast corner, the coldest corner, where the two darkest walks meet, and listen to the geometry. Fountain to your left, faint and silver. Wind above the roofs, kept out, humming to itself over the tiles. Somewhere far behind stone, the smallest ghost of the singing you heard earlier, a monk humming tomorrow's antiphon over some late task. The cloister collects the abbeys, sounds the way the garth collects snow, gently, at the center of everything. They built this square as a picture of the world, as they hoped it might be. Order around the edges, heaven open above, water at the middle. Whether the world has ever cooperated with that picture is a long question for daytime. But tonight, with the snow coming down soft into the lamplight of one small lantern by the church door, the picture and the world are, for once, in perfect agreement. It is worth remembering, standing in all this white, what the garth is in June. Roses along the south border, herbs in the middle beds, a plum tree in the corner that the novices are not supposed to climb and keep climbing, bees working the lavender, the fountain flashing, the arcade shade cool as well water. The monks read out here in summer, and the pages of their books throw light up into their faces, and the whole square smells of warm stone and time. That garden is not gone tonight. It is here, asleep under the snow, every root of it, waiting with the same patience as everything else in this house. Winter, the gardener brother says, is just the garden praying. Above the west walk, the bell stirs the hour again, and its note falls into the square and lies there like everything else, unhurried at home. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. In the middle of the garth, the little fountain answers, as it has answered every hour for 700 years. Still here, still running, all well. In this entire abbey of stone corridors and singing breath, there is exactly one room where a fire burns for no other purpose than warmth, and you smell it before you find it. Wood smoke, resin, and warm stone, leaking under a heavy door at the end of the cloister's south walk. Push it open. This is the warming room, and on a winter night, it is the most defensible idea mankind ever had. The room is not large, and it is not fancy. A broad hearth, a fire of good oak burning low and steady, benches around three sides, and a floor worn smooth as leather by generations of cold feet arriving with dignity and haste at once. The rule of the house allows this one fire from the feast of All Saints in the autumn until Easter, and not a day longer. Warmth, like everything here, is measured, which is exactly what makes it so warm. A handful of the older monks have the hour here between supper and the day's last service, and they hold it the way old men hold all their best hours, mostly in silence, entirely in comfort. Hands are spread to the blaze and turned over, and spread again. Chilblained fingers, cracked by cold and work, ease open by degrees. One ancient brother has his bare feet propped shamelessly toward the coals, and no one has said a word about it for upward of 20 years. Quiet talk is permitted here, one of the few rooms where it is, and the talk is exactly what you would hope. The state of the roads, the health of the red cow, whether the young ones sang the third psalm too fast tonight, a question raised every night through the winter, never once resolved, and clearly never meant to be. Conversation as a slow fire of its own, banked low, fed a word at a time. This room has its practical offices too. Ink is thawed here, and the little pots of color for the painters. Boots are dried along the hearth's edge in a steaming row, each pair known to its owner by the shape of its own wear. The wax for sealing letters is softened here, and once a year, in the deep of January, the whole community is bled by the infirmarian in this room, an old custom of the old medicine, and given extra rations after, and everyone agrees the extra rations are the effective part. Sit on the bench in the corner and let the fire do its work on you. Notice how everyone in the room is doing precisely what you are doing, which is nothing, thoroughly. In a house where every hour has its assigned labor, and every labor its assigned hour, this hour's labor is rest, and they work at it with the same seriousness they bring to the harvest. There is wisdom in that arrangement that the busy world keeps discovering and losing again, century after century. This room is also where the Abbey keeps its memory, in the only storage that matters, old men with time. Ask the right question here and you will be answered with the great frost year, when the river froze to the bed and wolves crossed on the ice, and the Abbey fed half the valley till April, or the year of the comet, which the then abbot declared an omen of nothing whatsoever, a ruling still quoted with approval, or the visit, 60 years back, of a king. He came with 40 horses, stayed 2 nights, ate like a novice after Lent, and left a chalice. The chalice is in the strong room. The horses, the old men agree, were the truly memorable part. The fire itself is tended by the youngest novice present, that being the tradition, and he takes it seriously, adjusting logs that need no adjustment with the enormous care of the newly trusted. The old men watch him over their folded hands with a kindness they are careful to keep out of their faces. Every one of them was once the boy poking the fire. Every one of them remembers. When the bell rings for the last service of the day, they will rise, joints announcing themselves, and file out into the cold with the fire's warmth banked inside their habits like coals wrapped in ash. It will last them with care until bed. Warmth is measured here, but it is not small. Nothing about this room is small except its size. Listen, there it is now. The bell, one note through the door, gathering the house again. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. The old men rise. The boy gives the fire one last, wholly unnecessary, deeply satisfying poke, and the warming room settles down to keep itself warm till morning. Behind the refectory, connected to it by a hatch and a smell, lies the kitchen. And the kitchen is the one room in the Abbey that never entirely sleeps. Even now, with supper long cleared, there is light under its door and slow work inside. Bread does not keep Abbey hours. Bread keeps its own, and the whole house in the end keeps bread's. A step in, the room is cavernous and warm, all brick and copper and scrubbed oak, lit by one lamp and the deep orange eye of the banked ovens. 2 lay brothers are at the long table, aprons over their habits, setting tomorrow's loaves to rise. 20 round loaves, 30, in wicker baskets under linen cloths, each one a pale sleeping face being put to bed in its turn. By the first service of the morning they will have risen full, and by sunrise they will be bread. The lay brothers are worth a word, because the Abbey does not run on prayer alone, and no one knows it better than the Abbey. These are the practical men, brothers of the barn and the bakehouse and the fish pond, men who took the habit but not the Latin, and whose service is measured in flour and firewood rather than psalms. The house holds them in plain high honor. An abbot, one of them will tell you, can be replaced from among 20 men. A good baker, heaven provides when it is feeling generous. The sourdough itself, the leaven, lives in a covered crock on a shelf above the ovens, in the steady warmth, and it is spoken of frankly as the oldest member of the community. It came, the story runs, from the Mother Abbey when this house was founded, carried in a saddlebag, fed all the way like a nursing lamb. Every loaf since has descended from it. The brothers feed it morning and night, and if the whole Abbey burned, one suspects the crock would come out first, under somebody's arm, ahead of the silver. Beyond the kitchen lies the cellarer's storeroom, and the cellarer's storeroom is the Abbey's winter made visible. Wheels of cheese on shelves, aging in their gray rinds, each stamped with the Abbey's mark. Apples laid in straw, not touching, a whole orchard put carefully to sleep, barrels of salted fish for the fast days, sacks of beans and barley, ropes of onions, crocks of honey, jars of dried herbs. The cellarer knows this room to the last onion, and writes it all in his book. He sleeps, they say, better than anyone in the house, because he alone knows exactly how far it is to spring. High on the wall, out of casual reach, hangs a small cupboard with its own lock, and its own entry in the accounts, and its contents would buy the red cow twice over. The spice cupboard, pepper counted nearly by the grain, a knot of ginger, cinnamon bark in a linen wrap, saffron in a twist of parchment no bigger than a thumb. It came across the whole world by ship and camel and cart. Now it waits here, above a kitchen in a snowy valley for Easter. The cellarer carries the key on the ring next to the strong rooms, which tells you the Abbey's honest opinion of the matter. Twice a year the cupboard opens, and for a week afterward the whole refectory smells faintly of somewhere no one in the valley has ever been. The kitchen serves more than the community, and the margin is not small. Every day at the gate, the almoner gives out bread to whoever stands there needing it, and in a hard winter the line is long. The ovens are sized for that line. It is why there are 30 loaves rising tonight and not 18. In the Abbey's accounting, that bread is not charity riding on top of the day's work. It is the day's work, as fixed as the bell. One more marvel hides in this kitchen's walls, and the world outside will not catch up to it for centuries. Water indoors on demand. Lead pipes run from the spring house above the Abbey, under the cloister, to a tap shaped like a lion's mouth over the great stone sink. And when the cook turns the wooden spigot, the spring obeys. Castles envy this. Kings have washed in worse. The Abbey takes it entirely for granted, which is the surest mark of good engineering. And the lion's mouth, polished by 4 generations of scouring, grins into the dark over its own private joke about civilization. The 2 brothers finish the last basket, wipe the table with the economy of men who have wiped it 10,000 times, and stand a moment surveying the room the way the farmer surveyed his yard, hands on hips, reading everything at a glance. Ovens banked, leaven fed, loaves rising, kindling laid for the morning fire. The whole engine of tomorrow's bread is wound and set, and needs nothing more from anyone until the small hours. One of them takes the lamp, and they go out through the cold passage toward their dormitory, talking quietly about nothing much. The red cow again, the state of the mill race. Behind them the kitchen settles into its half-sleep, warm, fragrant, faintly ticking as the ovens cool a degree and hold. Under the linen cloths in the dark, 30 loaves go on quietly becoming themselves. The bell sounds the hour across the yard, muffled by snow. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. So is dough. By morning, patience will smell like heaven all the way to the gatehouse. On the east side of the Abbey, past the chapter house, stands a long, low building with its own small chapel and its own kitchen and, rarest of all, its own fireplaces. This is the Infirmary, the house of the sick and the old, and the rule that measures warmth so strictly everywhere else opens its hand entirely here. Whatever comfort the Abbey owns, it owns first for this roof. Tonight the Infirmary holds 3 souls, all of them simply old, which the infirmarian will tell you is the one condition he has never once managed to improve. Brother Anselm, who was cellarer for 40 years and now sleeps mostly, with the accounts of vanished harvests still moving behind his closed eyes. A second old brother whose hearing has gone soft, and who says the Abbey has never sounded better. And a third, the eldest, who taught half the living community their letters. He is taught things in his turn now, patiently, several times a day. The infirmarian himself is a broad, calm man, with hands like a plowman and a memory like a book of receipts. He moves down the room now with a candle, unhurried, listening at each bed the way the farmer listened at the byre door, reading the breathing. He straightens a blanket that needed no straightening. He sets a cup of water where a waking hand will find it. Small offices done in the dark that no one will ever record. His workroom off the main hall smells like summer locked in a chest. From its beams hang the harvest of the herb garden, bundle upon dry bundle, sage for the throat, horehound for the chest, fennel for the stomach, lavender because, he says, no reason at all, which from him is a whole philosophy. On the shelves stand honey and vinegar, and a small famous bottle of strong spirits that appears in the accounts, year after year, as medicine, in the steadiest handwriting in the Abbey. His medicine is the medicine of his age, and much of it in truth is warmth, broth, cleanliness, and time. But do not undervalue it. Warmth, broth, cleanliness, and time, delivered reliably, by a calm man in a quiet room, has stood many a body back on its feet that harsher doctoring would have finished. He would put it more modestly. I keep them warm, he says, and stay out of nature's way. She has been at this trade longer than I have. Under the snow outside his window sleeps the physic garden itself, the neat beds resting like the pots in the kitchen. Sage rose under white, the fennel gone to dry sticks, its seed long since gathered. The roses, whose hips went into syrup in October. He knows every plant's place beneath the blanket, and on the worst nights of February he will stand at this window, they say, planning the sowing, the way other men read letters from home. The infirmary's door, like the kitchen's, opens wider than the community. Village folk come up the hill with their coughs and their burns and their worries, and the infirmarian sees them all, at the little window of his workroom, in the hour after the morning meeting. Honey and horehound for the miller's chesty daughter, a salve for the ploughman's cracked hands, and the sharp instruction, repeated yearly, to wear the mittens his wife makes him. Comfort for what can be comforted, plain words gently for what cannot. He keeps a ledger of it all, names and remedies in his even hand, and the ledger says more about the Abbey's place in this valley than any charter in the strong room. From the eldest brother's bed, a voice asks the hour, not anxious, just asking, the way you touch a familiar wall in the dark. Near the middle of the night, brother, says the infirmarian, nothing wants doing, and the old teacher, who once drilled that very phrase into novices as an example of a proper Latin construction, smiles at the beams, corrects the grammar in a whisper out of pure habit, and lets the night have him again. Along the workroom's deepest shelf stands the year itself, preserved in jars, rose-hip syrup, red as a robin, put up in October against the winter coughs, elderberry, dark and serious, honey infused with thyme, honey with sage, plain honey for everything the flavored kinds haven't answered, dried raspberry leaf, blackberry leaf, a small hoard of candied angelica that is officially medicine, and unofficially the reason certain novices report sore throats in February. The infirmarian counts the jars the way the cellarer counts cheeses, by lamplight, with quiet satisfaction. A shelf like this, he says, is a summer that agreed to wait. The infirmarian banks the fire in the great room, sets the guard before it, and takes a last look down the hall the way the grandmother looked down the longhouse. 3 sleepers, breathing well, water in reach, fire safe. His own cot stands in the corner of the workroom, because an infirmarian sleeps where his work can wake him, and always has. The bell reaches even here, softened by 2 walls and the snow, and it finds nothing that needs mending. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. In the warmest room of the Abbey, old age dozes by a generous fire, in very good hands. At the foot of the orchard, in a sheltered corner where the wall breaks the north wind, stand 7 straw hives under 7 little caps of snow, and inside them, against all appearance, 7 small nations are wide awake. The Abbey's bees. No creature on the grounds is spoken of with more respect, and none, it is fair to say, repays the Abbey better. A hive in winter does not sleep and does not freeze, and how it manages this is one of those plain miracles the brothers never tire of retelling. The bees gather into a ball around their queen, thousands deep, and they shiver. That is the whole secret. Each bee works its wing muscles without flying, making a little warmth, and the ball breathes slowly in and out, the cold outer bees rotating inward to warm up while warmed ones take their turn on the frontier. All winter, in the dark in perfect order, they take turns being the outside. The old brother who keeps them, and who has kept them for 30 years, will tell you he has learned more about running a community from the hives than from several books he could name, and then he will look very hard at nothing until you stop asking. He talks to them, of course. All beekeepers talk to them. It is the custom of the whole countryside to tell the bees the news of the house, the deaths and the arrivals, and whatever one thinks of the custom, the Abbey's bees are told everything, and the Abbey's hives thrive. What the bees give back is honey, and something rarer, wax, and wax is light, not the smoky, spitting, mutton-smelling light of tallow candles, which is what most of the world reads and eats and prays by, but beeswax light, steady and golden and clean, with a faint sweetness in the smell of it, summer paying a visit to winter. It is the finest light there is, and there is never enough of it. So the Abbey spends it the way you spend anything precious, by rule. Beeswax burns at the altar, and in the great candles of the choir, and almost nowhere else. The Scriptorium begs a little for close work, and is sometimes indulged. Everywhere else, the passages, the kitchen, the barns, makes do with tallow and rushlights, and knows exactly why. When you saw the church glowing at Vespers, you were looking at the bees' summer, spent an hour at a time. The candle-making itself happens twice a year in the bakehouse yard, and it is a festival in everything but name. The great kettle over a slow fire, the smell of melting wax carrying to the gatehouse, wicks of twisted flax dipped and dipped again, growing a skin of gold with every pass. The novices in a row like fishermen, dipping to a chant to keep the rhythm even. 40 dips makes an altar candle. Everyone within these walls learns that number young, and no one forgets it. In the storeroom now, the year's candles stand in ranked bundles, tall as a child's arm, wrapped in cloth against dust and mice. Enough. The sacristan calculates each autumn to light the house through to Easter with a margin for feast days. That shelf of quiet gold is the whole partnership written plainly. The monks feed the bees' meadows and keep their winters safe. The bees light the Abbey's long nights. Neither side has ever broken the bargain, and once a year, from the best of the honey, the cellarer makes the Abbey's rarest drink. Mead, honey, water, patience, and a barrel, nothing else, aged in the coolest corner of the cellar for feast days of the first rank only. There is never much. There is not supposed to be much. A small cup each, golden, tasting of every meadow within a mile, and the old brothers hold it to the light before they drink, every year, and every year someone says the same thing. Summer they say, "Bottled," and every year it is exactly true, and exactly enough. Tonight the 7 hives stand silent under their snow caps, and if you laid an ear against the straw, and the beekeeper has, on cold nights, more than once, you would hear it. A hum, faint and deep and continuous, like a cathedral heard from another country. The sound of a summer sleeping, with the engine running. He says there is no better sound in the world to hear through falling snow, and no one who has heard it argues. Away over the roofs, the bell lets fall the hour, and if the bees mark it, they keep the observation to themselves. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. In the corner of the orchard, under the snow, 7 small nations hum their one long note toward spring. The bell calls once more, low and brief, and the whole house answers it by converging, out of kitchens and corridors, and the warming rooms glow, on the darkened church. This is Compline, the last office of the day, the shortest and the gentlest, and it is not so much a service as a tucking in. The day is over. Compline is how a monastery says so, out loud, and means it. The church is darker than it was at Vespers, 2 candles only, either side of the choir, and the great pillars barely suggested overhead. The monks file into their stalls by feel, and 40 years of habit. There are no books tonight. Compline is sung from memory. Every night the same psalms, the same handful of prayers, words worn so smooth that the mouth can walk them with the mind already half asleep. That is not a flaw in the design. That is the design. The singing at this hour is different in kind, quieter, lower, closer to speech. The sound of men who have used their voices since before dawn and are setting them down gently. The last tool of the day returned to its rack. The verses lean on one another. The pauses stretch a little longer than strict measure would ask, and no one corrects them. You can hear inside the chant how tired the house is, and how content. There is one line sung every night at this service, and it is the whole hour in a sentence. Keep us, it asks, as the apple of an eye. Hide us under the shadow of wings. Men who rose in the black of the morning, and worked and sang and studied and worked again, stand in the cold dark asking to be kept, asking in the oldest words they own, to be held through the night like something small and valued. Whatever a listener believes or doesn't, it is hard to hear that and not settle an inch deeper into your own blanket. Near the end, the abbot rises and walks slowly down the choir with holy water, and flicks a few drops toward each bowed head in passing, a blessing against the terrors of the night, as the old books put it. The drops land cold and small, like the first touch of rain on a summer road. One novice flinches every night. He is young. The night still has terrors worth the name. The water is for him most of all, and the abbot's hand, passing, rests one extra moment on his shoulder, and then it is done. No procession, no ceremony. The candles are pinched out. The red altar lamp is left to its lonely work, and the monks go out not by the cloister, but up a narrow stair at the back of the choir. The night stair. It leads directly from the church to the dormitory above, built so that sleep and prayer stand door to door, with nothing between them but 20 worn steps. Men have gone up those steps drowsy and come down them drowsy for 300 years. The stone dips in the middle of each tread like a held note. You watch the last hooded figure rise out of sight, hear a door softly close, and the church is yours and the lamps alone. High above, the tower holds its tongue now until midnight. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. The day has been formally, thoroughly, and very gently ended. Before you follow the sleepers up the night stair, stay behind a moment in the emptied church, because an abbey church at night, alone with its one red lamp, is a room almost nobody living has ever seen, and it is worth the cold. The door of the choir closes on the last hooded back. The dark settles, and the building, freed of its congregation, begins very quietly to be itself. The red lamp hangs on its chain before the altar, a single flame behind colored glass, and it is the oldest continuous thing in the house after the leaven and the bell. It has burned without going out. They will tell you since the church was consecrated, tended like the longhouse fire, wick by wick, oil by oil, across 2 centuries of sacristans. Whole generations have been born, professed, and buried in this valley, while that one small light stayed lit. At night it owns the whole vast dark and rules it gently, from one red point. Walk up the choir between the empty stalls. Each seat has its little hinged ledge, and if you tip one up you will find, carved underneath where only the carver and heaven were meant to look, the woodworker's private world. A fox in a monk's hood preaching to geese, a man wrestling his own boot, 2 dogs at a bone, a face with its tongue out, a mermaid combing her hair of all things, 40 miles from any sea. Solemn men sat on these jokes for lifetimes, and the carvers knew it, and that was the joke. Every trade leaves its signature somewhere. The Abbey's carpenters left theirs laughing, in the dark, under the seats of the pious. Along the north wall, flat stones in the floor carry the names of the abbots, each with his years, worn shallower in order of age until the oldest are just ghosts of letters. A curve here, a cross there. The brothers walk over them daily, which is exactly what those men asked for, to lie where the community passes, under its feet, part of the pavement of the ongoing house. There are 11 of them. The stone for the 12th is not cut yet, and the current abbot, who will someday be under it, walks over the blank space every day with, one imagines, a complicated tranquility. In a side chapel, behind a small grill, the abbey keeps its one treasure of the famous kind, a relic, a sliver of bone in a little case of silver and crystal, brought back by the founder from a pilgrimage nobody now can fully reconstruct. Twice a year it is carried in procession, and the valley comes to see. The rest of the year it rests here in the dark, and the sacristan, dusting the grill weekly, nods to it, colleague to colleague. Whatever it is and whatever it was, it has kept these people company a long time, and courtesy is courtesy. Run a candle close along any pillar, and you will find the signatures nobody signed. Mason's marks, small scratched signs, an arrow, a crossed circle, a three-stroke star, cut by the men who dressed each stone 2 centuries ago, so the master could tally each man's work for pay. Every mason had his own mark, kept for life, inherited sometimes like a name. The men are gone past all finding, their wages long spent, their tools rust. The marks are still holding up the roof. Our young mason in the guest hall could read this whole church like a muster roll, and if he wakes early, he will be in here doing exactly that, candle in hand, meeting his trades dead by their signs. Stand at the crossing now, the center of the whole stone ship, and hear the building breathe. Cold air moves in it slowly, in currents too large to feel and just large enough to hear. A hush that never quite becomes a sound. Timber ticks somewhere in the roof. The lamp flame leans and rights itself. Frost is at work on the windows, growing its white ferns inward from the leading, and by morning the glass pictures will bloom with them, saints under winter gardens. They say every church this size has its own note, a pitch it holds below hearing, made of all its spaces answering one another. The choir tunes to it without knowing, year after year, and that, they say, is why the singing of one house never quite sounds like another's. True or not, it is the kind of thing that feels true at midnight, standing on 11 abbots under the red lamp, inside a stone instrument the size of a hill, listening to it not quite play. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. The church holds its one red thought until morning. Go up now quietly. The house is going to sleep. From this moment until the morning, the Abbey enters what the rule calls the Great Silence, and the name is exact. Not quiet, silent, as a discipline and a shelter both. From Compline to first light, no voice speaks within these walls except to sing the night office or to meet an emergency. And a monastery counts very few things as emergencies that the world would. Follow the last of them up the night stair to the dormitory, the long sleeping hall above the cloister's east walk. It is one open room as the rule prefers, a row of low wooden partitions making each brother a narrow harbor of his own, a straw mattress, a bolster, 2 wool blankets, a hook for the habit, and nothing else at all. The abbot sleeps at the end, nearest the stair, first up by right and by custom. They sleep, it must be said, nearly dressed in the long woolen undertunic, partly against the cold and partly because midnight will call them down to sing, and a monastery values a short commute. Boots wait side by side at each bed's foot. The habits hang on their hooks like a row of resting shadows. From under one partition comes already the deep, even breathing of a lay brother who bakes at 4 and has never in his life needed rocking. One small lamp burns at either end of the hall, night lights for grown men, and the rule that ordered them knew exactly what it was doing. Stone corridors past midnight are one thing with a lamp at the end of them, and quite another without. The wicks are trimmed low, giving off less light than presence. Between them, the winter moon does the real work, laying pale lozenges across the floorboards through a row of small high windows. Winter has taught the dormitory its own quiet crafts, passed novice to novice like the sign language. A flat stone, warmed all evening on the warming room hearth and wrapped in a piece of old habit, goes into the foot of a bed an hour before its owner, and holds its heat till midnight. Blankets are layered with a straw mat between, which the shepherds taught somebody's grandfather. The brothers from farm families sleep with tomorrow's socks inside their tunics, warming against the chest, and the brothers from town families learned it from them within a week of their first November. Against the cold, as against most things, the Abbey's real weapon is accumulated cleverness, applied nightly in silence. It is worth saying plainly what this silence is for, because it is easy to mistake it for mere sternness. The brothers would tell you it is not a wall but a room. All day the world runs on words, asks and answers, argues and instructs. The great silence closes that shop for the night, and lets what is underneath the words come up, the way stars need dark to be visible at all. Some of them meet their deepest peace there. All of them, at minimum, get an unbroken night structure that the noisy world would envy. And the silence has a texture once you are inside it. It is not empty. Straw ticks under a turning sleeper. The wind works at a shutter with one soft claw. Stone answers frost, far down in a wall with a knock too deep to place. The fountain in the cloister, faint and forever. A monastery at night is not soundless. It is a house where every remaining sound has been chosen, weighed, and found harmless. Once in the night, a shape moves down the dormitory that is not a dream, and it carries a small horn lantern hooded to a glow. The circator, the rounds man. It is an office as old as the rule. One brother appointed by the week to walk the sleeping house, and his errand is nothing but care. He checks that the lamps burn and do not gutter. He listens at the dark for coughs that want the infirmarian. He straightens, without waking anyone, the blanket the young novice has kicked loose again, this being the fourth night running, and the circator this week being a man of method. Then he passes on, down the night stair, through the cloister, a warm coal of light traveling the cold house. The sleepers he passes settle deeper, without knowing why. Somewhere down the hall a brother whispers, not to his neighbor, and the whisper is permitted, being the one kind the silence was built to hold. Old words said flat into the dark, the day handed over item by item. Even without belief, you would recognize the shape of it. Everyone alive has lain in the dark handing over the day, hoping someone somewhere has the taking of it. The moon slides its pale panes slowly along the floor as the night leans. 20 narrow harbors, 20 sleepers, one lamp at each end burning like patience made visible. Below them all in the empty church, the red lamp keeps its watch. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. The great silence holds the whole house in its open hand. Beyond the kitchen yard, strung along the channel of diverted river that the brothers dug 3 centuries ago and still call, with quiet pride, the new ditch, stand the Abbey's waterworks, the brewhouse, the fish ponds, the mill. Nobody is awake in any of them, and all 3 are working anyway, which is the whole genius of the arrangement. Take the brewhouse first, warm-smelling even at midnight, sweet with malt and old oak. Ale is not a luxury here. It is the daily drink of the whole house, guest and abbot alike, brewed mild and brown in great batches. The water of the world, as every age before ours knew in its bones, is a gamble. Ale is water that has been made trustworthy. Each brother's daily measure is set generously in the rule, a fact the rule's critics have enjoyed for centuries, and its friends have enjoyed rather more. In the fermenting vats tonight, under wooden lids, this month's brew is quietly at work. Lean close and you can hear it, a faint continuous whisper of small bubbles, like rain heard from indoors. The brewer calls this sound the ale saying its own office, and being a lay brother of long service, he is allowed the joke, once per guest. Nothing needs doing. His yeast, like the baker's leaven, is old, inherited, and fed like a dependent. The Abbey keeps more living things than the accounts admit. Below the brewhouse lie the fish ponds. 3 of them step down the slope, black rectangles under lids of new ice. Fish is what the community eats on the many days when meat is set aside. So the ponds are the larder's second wing, stocked with carp and bream that hang now near the muddy bottoms, slowed almost to stopping by the cold, wintering the way fish do, on next to nothing. The pond keeper checks the ice for breathing holes each morning. Otherwise, the ponds too are working by doing nothing whatever. And then the mill, astride the new ditch where the water falls, the strongest servant the Abbey owns. By day it grinds the valley's grain, the Abbeys and the farms alike. Its great stones turning with a rumble you can feel through your boots at 50 paces. Tonight the sluice is dropped, and the wheel hangs still and black, hung with icicles like a giant's comb. The only voice is the water itself, hurrying under the ice past the closed gate, on toward the river, taking the Abbey's power with it unspent. Below the lowest pond, where the new ditch rejoins the river, the brothers keep their eel traps, woven willow funnels staked into the current. The eels of this valley have been paying a modest regular tax to the Abbey since before the oldest chronicle. In autumn, when the eels run, the traps come up heavy and the kitchen smokes them in the bakehouse chimney. And smoked eel is, by long unofficial consensus, the finest thing the house produces, the Abbey's one luxury that costs nothing but willow and patience. The traps stand empty now under the ice, waiting out the season like everything else. But the pond keeper walks down weekly to see them anyway. A man likes to visit his best idea, stand on the little bridge by the mill, and look back up the slope. Brewhouse, ponds, mill, bakehouse beyond, and the great dark church above them all. It is easy from here to see the Abbey as the valley sees it. Not a house of mystics, but the best-run farm within 3 days' riding. A place where water is made to climb and grind and fill ponds, where nothing is wasted and everything is written down. Both views are true. The singing and the sluice gates were never 2 different projects. Ask any monk. Order is order. The snow has stopped falling, somewhere in the last half hour, without anyone's permission or notice. The clouds are loosening overhead, and between them the first stars of the night show sharp and sudden, reflected in the black ice of the highest pond, little lights held under glass. From the tower, muffled by distance and snow, the bell speaks the hour to the sleeping waterworks. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. The ale whispers. The fish hang dreaming. The mill wheel wears its icicles and waits for morning, strong and idle as a resting ox. Back within the cloister, in a bay of the east walk fitted with doors, stands a piece of furniture that the whole Abbey treats the way other houses treat a shrine. A great oak chest, iron-bound, double-locked, its lid scarred by 200 years of careful hands. The book chest, the library, the entire library, and that fact, more than any other single thing tonight, will tell you what a book is worth in this world. Count them as the precentor counts them twice a year, aloud with the abbot watching. Some 60 volumes, a great Bible in 2 vast bodies, the Psalters and the service books thumbed soft, the rule itself, in a copy so old its margins hold the handwriting of 5 dead priors, Lives of the Saints, a herbal much consulted by the Infirmarian, 2 Chronicles, a book of letters, a Virgil whose presence is explained, when it is questioned, with a small cough and the word grammar. 60 volumes, and this house is accounted well read. Most parish churches in the valley own precisely 1 book, and guard it like fire, understand what each of them cost, and the locks stop looking excessive. The vellum of the Great Bible alone is the skins of a whole herd of calves. They reckon it at above 200 years of a manor's cattle wearing Scripture. Add the copying, a scribe's full year and more per volume. Add ink, gold, binding boards, clasps. A single large book, honestly priced, trades level with a good farm. When this abbey says library, it is naming a treasury, and it knows it. And yet, and this is the part worth carrying to bed with you, the chest is not a hoard. Books go out of it constantly, on loan, against pledges to other abbeys, to a scholar at the cathedral school, once famously to a baron whose pledge was a meadow. Every loan is entered in the register, in the precentor's upright hand, because the other thing this age knows in its bones is that a book kept locked too long is only leather and dead calves. It becomes a book again in the moment someone reads it. Once a year in Lent comes the ceremony the novices love best, when the chest is opened and every brother returns the volume he was issued last year and receives another for the year ahead. One book, 1 year. The abbot reads the list. Some receive what they hoped. Some receive what the abbot judges they need, which is not always the same book, and the difference is itself considered part of the education. A year is a long time to live with one book. It is also, the old ones say, roughly the least a good one deserves. There are stories in the margins of these volumes that the register never mentions, little drawings where a copyist's mind wandered, a rabbit blowing a trumpet, a face in an initial that looks suspiciously like a long-dead cell error, curses, even, copied from older books, calling down doom on any man who steals this volume, alongside blessings on every soul who reads it kindly, and here and there pressed flowers, 500 springs old, marking pages nobody now can ask about. One book never goes out on loan, and it is the plainest in the chest and the dearest. The Chronicle, the Abbey's own diary, kept since the founding, a few lines a year in whatever hand held the office. Read a century of it at random, and you hold the valley in your palm. This year much snow, and the mill wheel mended. This year the great comet, which the Lord Abbot declared an omen of nothing. This year a good harvest, thanks be, and the new bell hung. And old Brother Morris went to God gently after Compline, as he always said he would. Wars get a line. The red cow gets a line. The Chronicle makes no distinction, and after enough centuries, you begin to see its point. Tonight will be in it too, eventually, folded into some future January's entry. Much snow, it will say. All well. Tonight the chest stands locked in the moonlit walk, drifted about at its feet with a little snow that came in on the wind before the weather cleared. The white cat passed this way an hour ago, his stitched line of prints running close along the chest's base, on patrol, guarding the guards, as it were. The precentor would approve. The hour lets itself be known from the tower, one soft stroke across the garth. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. Inside the oak and iron, 60 volumes wait out the night as they have waited out 2 centuries of nights, spelling, in the dark, to nobody, everything this house knows. All night we have heard it and not once seen it, so climb now, up the little locked door's stair that the sacristan sometimes forgets, up the turning steps inside the tower's cold throat, past the clock chamber with its patient iron, to the room at the top where the abbey keeps its voice. The bell chamber. 4 bells hang here in the frosty dark, in a timber frame like a ship's ribs, and the biggest of them is older than everything around it except the hill. They have names. That is the first thing to know, and the best. Bells in this age are not equipment but persons, baptized like children at their casting, with godparents and a feast. their names cut into their own bronze shoulders. The great bell is called Mary, as great bells usually are. The next is Gabriel. The third is named for the founder. And the small, quick one that rings for meals has been called the cook for 200 years by everyone, including, eventually, the abbots. When the valley says the bells are talking, it is barely a figure of speech. Lean close to the great bell, Mary, and look at her in the starlight through the louvers. 600 years of weather have streaked the bronze green and black. Around her shoulder runs her inscription, raised letters an inch tall, cast right into the metal the day she was born in a pit by the river. And you can read it with a fingertip, cold, biting through your glove. I praise the true God, it says. I call the people. I gather the clergy. I mourn the dead. I drive away storms. 600 winters into the job. She has kept every clause of that contract. Her casting is itself a story the valley still tells. The bell founder came with his wagons and dug his pit right here, because a bell this size travels worse than it is made. He built her mold of clay and horsehair and tallow, and the whole countryside brought its broken bronze, old pots, a cracked kettle, buckles, a warped candlestick to melt into the pour, which means that Mary's voice holds a little of every household of that generation. When she rings across the fields, she is, in the most literal way a thing can be, the whole valley speaking. The frame she hangs in is oak, and it moves. That surprises people. It is built to joints left just supple enough to take up the swing of half a ton of bronze the way knees take up a landing. The sacristan climbs here monthly with tallow for the bearings and a mallet to test the wedges. And he speaks of the frame the way sailors speak of a hull, tight enough to hold, loose enough to live. There are worse instructions, he observes, for most things. 1 floor below the bells, in the chamber you climbed through, lives the newest and strangest member of the household. The clock, iron, angular, oiled, a cage of wheels the size of a dog kennel, built by a traveling craftsman within living memory, and still regarded by half the community as a marvel, and by the other half as a fad. It has no face and no hands. Its whole vocation is to count to itself, tooth by tooth, and wake the sacristan's small bell at the right hours. Tick, it says, all day and all night, talk, with a shudder you can feel in the stair rail, the sound of time being made mechanical for the first time in this valley's history. The blind cantor has been heard to observe that it keeps worse time than a good stomach, but he says it fondly. Even the future, arriving in an abbey, arrives gently. From up here, too, you can see what the bell sees. The louvers slice the view into slats, but between them the whole night country lies out silver and still. The river's course, the sleeping village, the far farms, the forest ridge, every soul in that view, lives inside this bell's voice and always has. Born, they ring you in. Married, they ring you Mary. Buried, Mary tolls you out. 1 stroke for each year you managed, and the fields count along. A life here has a shape you can hear, and this cold little room is where the shape is made. The bells keep a whole year of customs, beyond the daily hours. The valley reads them all without thinking, the way you read a familiar face. On the great feasts, all 4 ring together. A tumbling golden racket the novices are allowed to help with, 2 boys to a rope, and grins all around. In the week of mourning, when the house loses one of its own, Mary rings muffled, a leather sleeve on her clapper. Her voice comes out wrapped in wool. The farms hear it and know, and pause in their work a moment, whoever it was. There is the little evening ring that tells the village children homeward. There is the weather ring, quick and urgent, when fog takes the valley and a traveler might be lost, rung sometimes half the night, a lighthouse made of sound. And once in the oldest men's memory, the bells rang backward, smallest to largest, which means fire. The whole valley came running with buckets, and the barn was saved. That ring has not been needed since. Every sacristan learns it anyway, first thing, before the rest. At midnight, the sacristan's rope, hanging down through its worn hole in the floor, will tighten, and Gabriel, the waker, will turn over in his frame and speak, and the sound will go out through these louvers in rings, over the dormitory, over the ponds, over the white road, dying somewhere out by the ford, in the ears of foxes. For now the four of them hang silent, immense, breathing frost, resting between words. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. You have now met the counter. Go down the cold stair quietly, and leave the four sleepers to their high, dark room. Last of all the waking, as in every well-run house, comes the man with the keys. The porter who opened the gate to you at dusk makes his slow round of the Abbey's bounds before he sleeps, lantern in one hand, the other free for latches, and a visitor could do worse than walk it with him, because nobody alive knows this place better, and nobody narrates it less. He begins always at the gate itself, though he locked it at dark. He tries the bar with his shoulder, glances through the grill at the empty white road, and stands a moment listening to the valley, exactly as the farmer listened at his yard. No bells but our own is what he is listening for. No hooves, no voices on the wind. The road tonight is snow and starlight from the ford to the forest, and not one soul upon it. In the wall beside the gate is a small shuttered niche, and this he checks with particular care. The dole cupboard, bread and a clay jug go into it at dusk, every dusk, so that a traveler arriving after the gate is barred need not stand knocking in the cold, or go on hungry. Perhaps one night in 20, the cupboard is empty by morning, and those are counted good nights. The bread did what bread is for. He replaces tonight's loaf, which has frozen lightly, with a fresher one he brought from the kitchen, and mutters something to himself about the cold that is not quite a complaint. Then the circuit, along the inside of the wall, past the orchard where the hives hum their secret, past the barn where the great horses shift and doze, standing in their stalls. He counts doors with his lantern the way the farmer counted latches, each one tried by hand, each one answering with its own voice. The barn door booms softly, the bakehouse door clicks, the little door to the bell tower, which the sacristan sometimes forgets, is tried twice, found locked and forgiven its history. At the stable he goes in, holding the lantern high, and the two Abbey horses turn their long heads into the light with the unhurried interest of retired professionals. He has carrots. He always has carrots in the same pocket, and the horses know the pocket. The whole transaction is conducted in under a minute, with the solemnity of an old treaty honored. The stable cat, a black cousin of the Scriptorium's officer, watches from the hay and receives. Being a cat, nothing, and expects. Being a cat, exactly that. The keys themselves deserve their word, for they are the Abbey's biography in iron. 11 on the great ring, no two alike, each worn bright where one man's thumb after another has ridden it. The gate key is oldest, near as old as Mary in the tower, a black iron tooth the length of a hand. The strongroom key is newest and cleverest, cut with wards like a little cathedral front. One key opens a door that no longer exists, burned in the fire nobody living remembers, and it stays on the ring anyway, because removing it has simply never come up. Keys are not discarded here. Doors come and go. His round ends where the walls overlook the river, at a corner where the walk widens into a little platform. Here, every night, in all weathers, he stops longer than any duty requires. Below, the valley lies still under the cleared sky, The river a black ribbon between white banks, the village lights long since out, the forest a held breath along the far ridge. He has looked at this view nightly for 30 years. He looks at it the way the grandmother looked down her hall, not checking anymore, just keeping company. Someone asked him once, a guest curious, what he thought about standing there each night. He considered the question for the better part of a minute, which with him signals respect, and said, "The gate is shut." And when the guest waited for more, he added kindly that there wasn't any more. That is the porter entire, 30 years of nights distilled. The gate is shut, and all that gray weight of wall and snow and starlight was, when you came down to it, one long way of saying so. He bolts the last door behind him, hangs the keys on their nail in the gatehouse where his hand can find them in the dark, and is asleep, one supposes, before the lantern smell has left the room. Above his little lodge, the tower begins to gather itself for the deep of the night. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. The bounds are walked. The gate is shut. The Abbey is one closed hand around its sleepers. And now, at last, your own corner of the night. The guest hall stands by the gate, a little apart from the cloister, because the rule that welcomes every stranger is also wise about strangers, and it is the one building in the Abbey that keeps ordinary human hours. Its fire is still up, its door is on the latch, and your bed, promised at dusk by the porter, is the third one down on the left, with your cloak already drying on the rail. The hall is one long room with a hearth in the middle of the floor, longhouse fashion, and low box beds down both walls, each with a straw mattress, a bolster, and 2 blankets of the Abbey's own wool, which you now know arrived here by way of sheep, stream, carding comb, and someone's whole winter of evenings. Knowing a blanket's biography, it turns out, makes it warmer. This is not a scientific finding. It is merely true. You are not alone tonight. 3 other travelers share the hall, and they are the whole world in miniature, as guest halls always are. A wool merchant, going home from the winter fair, who talked business at supper to anyone who would nod. He sleeps now flat on his back, with the fixed satisfaction of a man whose accounts came out right. A pilgrim, old and spare, with 40 miles behind her and 100 ahead, her staff laid on the floor beside the bed like a sword, and a young mason with his tools wrapped in oilcloth, walking from a finished cathedral toward a rumored one. He watched the pillars in the church at Vespers. You noticed, the way other men watch a face they might love. There was talk here earlier, before the Abbey's silence seeped under the door and hushed it, and it was good talk. Roads and prices and weather, the state of a bridge 2 valleys over, a wolf someone's cousin heard, the mason's cathedral described stone by stone until the fire burned low. Strangers talk, warm precisely because it owes nothing to yesterday and asks nothing of tomorrow. 4 people who will never meet again, briefly one household. There is a kind of rest in that which even this Abbey cannot improve on. This hall has held everyone in its time, and treated them all to the same fire. The guest book, kept since the founding, is in the strong room now. 3 volumes of names in a dozen inks. Bishops are in it and tinkers. A queen slept here once, in the great chamber above, while her escort filled this room wall to wall with snoring steel. Pilgrims beyond counting. A famous scholar who stayed a week and argued so well at supper that the abbot extended the fire hours, and unlettered travelers by the 100, marked only as a wayfarer, with the date, each one warmed and fed and sent on, their whole story in this world 4 words long. The rule makes no distinction, and the beds make even less. Everyone sleeps the same size. Now the hall sleeps, and you may do the thing you have been promising yourself since the gate. Boots off at last. set by the fire with the others in a companionable row. Cloak on the rail, the straw ticks and settles under you, taking your shape, and the wool comes up over your shoulders smelling faintly of smoke and lanolin. Exactly. You realize, like the blankets of a longhouse very far north of here, in another story, on another snowy night. Some comforts are one comfort, everywhere always. The fire has been banked by the lay brother who keeps this hall. Ash drawn over coals in the shape you now know by heart. The merchant breathes like a slow saw. The pilgrim is silent as her staff. Rafters tick. Snowlight lies in the one small window like a pane of gray silk. And under everything, if you listen with your eyes closed, the Abbey is there, the fountain's silver thread, the deep hum you now know as bees, the enormous patient quiet of a house that has done this every night for 700 years and will do it every night after you are gone. And think, as the straw settles, of the morning that is already prepared for you, every part of it, by people now asleep. The bread you smelled rising will meet you warm at the guest table. The singing of first light will come through the wall, as good as sunrise and earlier. The porter will have the gate open and the road's news with it, whether the ford is icy, which it will be, and whether more snow is coming, which he will know before the sky does. You will leave with bread in your pack that you did not ask for. Everyone does. It is the Abbey's oldest habit, sending its guests away provisioned, as if the whole world beyond the ford were one long famine it quietly intends to outlast. Whatever brought you up this valley, whatever roads wait past the ford, none of it can reach you here. The gate is shut. The porter said so, and the porter has never once been wrong. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient, and the next one belongs entirely to sleep. Deep in the middle of the night, at the hour when the whole world outside these walls is one dark-held breath, the bell wakes, not the full voice it uses on the day, a smaller, rounder tolling, patient and unmistakable, falling through the dormitory like slow stones into a pool. And the Abbey does the thing that, more than any wall or book or bee, makes it what it is. It gets up. It began, that waking bell, with one man and a rope. The sacristan rose first, as he has for 40 years, by the clock in his chest, dressed in the dark, and walked the cold passage to the tower with a stub of candle. At the rope he stood a moment, as he always stands, palms on the frost-stiff hemp, feeling for the great weight sleeping far above him in the frame. Then he pulled, leaning his whole body into the first stroke, and far overhead Gabriel turned in his bearings and gathered his voice, and the second stroke rang true. 12 strokes, counted in the old way, unhurried. A man, a rope, half a ton of singing bronze, and a whole valley's midnight, all connected in one straight line. This is vigils, the night office, the strangest and oldest of all the hours. In the long room the sleepers rise without words, feet finding boots, hands finding habits on their hooks. They file down the night stair by the glow of the 2 small lamps. They move with the shuffling competence of men who have done this every night of their adult lives, and could do it, and half are doing it, mostly asleep. The church at midnight is colder than the night outside, the way stone always overshoots. It is dark past the reach of its 2 candles. The monks fill the choir stalls, hoods up now against the chill, and stand a moment in complete silence, letting the last of the stair's drowsiness drain. Then one elderly voice, cracked with sleep and 60 winters, lifts the first line alone into the dark, and the whole choir comes in under it, low and warm, like ground rising to meet a landing bird. They will sing here, in the black middle of the night, for the better part of an hour. Long psalms, slow lessons read by lamplight, the great silences between. To the sensible world, this has always looked like madness, grown men trading good sleep for cold singing. The brothers have heard that opinion for 1,000 years. They keep rising. Ask them why, and the plainest answer you will get is the best one. Somebody, they say, should be awake. Somebody should keep watch while everyone sleeps, and say the words for the ones who can't or won't or have forgotten how. It might as well be us. That is the night office entire, the world's night watchman singing. And here is a thing worth knowing as you drift. In this age, almost everyone sleeps the way the monks do, in 2 halves. The first sleep from dark till around midnight, then an hour or so awake, quiet in bed or by embers, called simply the watch, when people pray or talk low or mend, or merely lie thinking with the doors of the mind ajar. And then the second sleep, deep and sweet until dawn. Whole centuries rested in that broken rhythm and thought nothing of it. If you yourself wake in the deep of tonight, remember them and don't fight it. You are not failing to sleep. You are keeping a very old watch. The second sleep will come, as it always came. In the guest hall you hear the office only as a low grain in the silence, rising and settling, more felt than heard, like a household talking quietly downstairs when you were small. It is, you realize, the single most sleep-giving sound you have ever heard. Whatever is out there in the dark of the world tonight, someone is up and singing at it on your behalf. You may hand the night over now. It is being held, and the valley hears it, out there in the dark in its own way. The midnight bell reaches every farm on the river, softened by miles and snow, and here and there it finds a farmer surfacing between his 2 sleeps and tells him the hour, and that the watch is kept, and he turns over easier for it. The shepherd in his hut on the high pasture hears it small and clear across the cold air and nods to it, colleague to colleague, 2 night watchmen at their posts. Children in the village have slept their whole lives inside that distant midnight sound, without ever once consciously hearing it. They will notice it only if they ever move away, when the deep of the night goes strangely silent, and they lie awake missing they cannot say what. The office ends as it began, with 1 bell note and a shuffle of boots on the night stair. The Abbey pours itself back into bed with an efficiency that would make any soldier smile. Within minutes the dormitory breathes evenly again, 20 sleepers back under wool, the second sleep taking them one by one, deepest of all sleeps, the one on the far side of the watch. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. Midnight is sung. The watch is kept. Sleep now, the singing said, in its old language, to everyone in the valley and to you. We have it from here. What a house full of monks' dreams. No chronicle records, and the monks themselves, examined at breakfast, would mostly claim not to remember, but a story that has come this far may guess, kindly and quietly, as we did once before in a longhouse far north of here. So, softly, bed by bed, the abbot dreams of rain, of all things, warm summer rain on a hayfield, from his boyhood before the habit and himself under it, small and soaked and glad. In the dream nobody needs anything from him. Not one soul in the world requires a decision. He stands in the gray, warm rain of about his 9th year, and lets it come down, and the field drinks, and that is the entire dream. He will wake rested and never know why. The precentor, who keeps the books and the register of loans, dreams in lists, but happily, the way a weaver dreams in thread. In tonight's dream the great chest opens and the books rise and shelve themselves in the air, spines aligned, every loan returned, not one page foxed, and the meadow the baron pledged is somehow also in the chest, green and folded neatly, smelling of June. He files it under summer. It fits. The young novice, the one who flinches at the holy water, dreams of home, as he does most nights still, the orchard behind his mother's house, his brothers up the trees, the dog barking at all of them impartially. In the dream, he is neither there nor here, but happily both. An impossible arithmetic that only dreams and mothers manage. He will be years, yet growing into these walls. The old ones know it, and are in no hurry on his behalf. The orchard, meanwhile, does him good. The copyist dreams, of course, of the letter, the great empty initial at the head of his page. In the dream he lays the gold leaf perfectly, first touch, no crease, and burnishes it until it holds not the candle flame but the sun itself, and the whole page warms under his hands like a living thing. Tomorrow, awake, he will do it almost that well. The dream is practice. Half of mastery is practice done asleep. The infirmarian dreams of his garden in July, bees loud in the lavender he grows for no reason at all, and his 3 old men walking its paths without sticks, upright and laughing, argued back to strength by warmth, broth, cleanliness, and time. It is the only impossible thing he permits himself, and he permits it nightly, and would tell you, if pressed, that hope kept in a dream stays fresher than hope carried all day. The porter dreams of the road, not of anyone on it, just the road itself, white and empty from the ford to the forest, and the gate shut, and everything in the whole visible world exactly where he left it. Some men's peace is a garden, and some men's is an orchard in rain. The porter's is an empty road at night, seen from a locked gate, and he has earned it, and it is not small. The blind cantor dreams in sound alone, and has for 11 years. He will tell anyone who asks that he lost nothing worth the keeping. Tonight he dreams the Abbey's whole year of music at once, every feast, every antiphon, all sounding together, and yet each one clear. A river holds 1,000 currents, and stays one river. So does he. In the middle of it, one voice, his mother's, humming the tune she hummed at the wash trough 60 years ago. It fits the harmony exactly. It always has. In the guest hall, your fellow travelers dream their traveling dreams. The merchant dreams in wool soft bales of it, stacked to a warehouse roof, every fleece graded right. Somewhere in the dream, his late wife laughs at him for counting in his sleep. He counts on happily, because in the dream she stays while he does. The pilgrim dreams of the road, but the road as it will be in May, dry underfoot, hedges white with blossom, the shrine one valley closer, and the mason dreams of his rumored cathedral, and in the dream it is already built, and it is impossible. He walks through it taking notes, because even asleep, a good craftsman is not above stealing from heaven. The white cat sleeps in the empty scriptorium, in the exact center of the warmest desk, and dreams what all his ancestors back to the first grain store cat have dreamed. Motion in shadow, the freeze, the wait, the spring. His paws flex once. In the wall, the real mice, who know precisely where he is at all times, go about their business on the far side of the room, and the old treaty holds till morning, and under them all, the Abbey itself dreams its long stone dream, of the hill it was quarried from perhaps, or of nothing, or of exactly this. Frost works its joints and finds them sound. The river ice booms once far down, and the walls hear it through their foundations and stand, as they have stood through everything, holding their sleepers like held breath. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient. Every soul within the bounds is asleep now, and every one of them is dreaming toward the light. There is an hour before the first office of the morning that belongs to nobody, and by now you know it well, because every quiet place on earth has one. The storm-swept farm had it. The Abbey has it now. The night's singing is long done. The morning's has not stirred. Even the bell is asleep in its tower, between duties, hanging silent over the whole white valley like a held word. Step out one last time into the cloister, the way only a story can, without one boot print in the snow. The sky has finished clearing. Stars stand thick over the garth, the same wheel that turned over the longhouse turning here, the wagon low now, the nail holding, the long pail rode across the roof of the world dimming toward the east. Starlight and snowlight together make a brightness with no source at all, and the four walks lie in it like a drawing of themselves. The fountain runs on in the middle of the garth, smaller voiced in the deep cold but running. It is the only motion in the visible world, and the only sound except one. Listen. Under everything, fainter than the fountain, there it is, the hives at the orchard foot, humming their single sleeping note, water and bees at the bottom of the night, holding the Abbey's silence up between them like two hands under a bowl. The red lamp still burns in the empty church. The dole cupboard holds its loaf against the possibility of a stranger. Down every dark corridor of this house, some small kept thing is doing its quiet work. The leaven rising, the ale whispering, the candles ranked and waiting, the books spelling in the dark, the old men breathing evenly in the warmest room. Nothing is finished, and nothing needs to be. It is all, simply and precisely, kept. This is a house built entirely out of the verb to keep, and at this hour you can hear every tense of it at once. In the dormitory, the sleepers have reached the deepest shelf of the second sleep, that far country from which the bell will have to call them twice. The abbot's breathing has slowed to match the house. The novice has one arm out of the blanket, flung over the rail toward the orchard of his dream. The cold will tuck it back in before the bell does. On the warmest desk in the Scriptorium, the cat has curled himself into a perfect white full stop at the end of the night's long sentence. Soon, though not yet, the sacristan will wake by the clock inside him that has not missed in 40 years. He will go down cold stairs and take the bell rope in both hands. Soon the loaves will go into the ovens, and the smell of bread will make its morning pilgrimage from the bakehouse to the gate. Soon the east will turn the color of old vellum, and the office of dawn will rise with it, as it has risen here 30,000 mornings running. Soon, not yet. The hour before is still the hour before, and it is wide, and it is yours. Let it be wide. Nothing in this whole valley is asked of anyone until the bell says so, and the bell is asleep. The world, as a very old friend of ours likes to say, can wait until morning. The bell counts the hours, and the hours are patient, and the patience at this hour is the whole of the message and the whole of the peace. Rise up over the Abbey now, the way stories rise when they are nearly done, up past the dormitory windows with their two small lamps, past the tower where the bell hangs dreaming, up into the enormous starred silence above the roofs, until the whole valley lies below you at once, white and still and complete, like a Psalter page with one gold initial, and the initial is the Abbey, and the light in it is everything you have seen tonight. There is the gatehouse, with its sleeping keeper and its loaf in the wall. There the church, one red spark in all that stone. There the kitchen's banked warmth. The infirmary's generous chimney still breathing a last gray thread. The orchard with its 7 snow-capped nations humming. The mill hung with icicles above the hurrying dark water, every piece of it kept, 700 winters this has stood here, doing tonight, and it holds tonight the way the choir held that low note under the old man's voice, effortlessly, because it has held it so long. And you, listener, wherever your bed truly is, you have been the traveler at the gate all evening, and the rule of this house went with you everywhere. Received first, question never. The warmest seat the fire's side, the bread without asking, whatever week you walked in from, whatever roads are still on your boots, that welcome was the story's to give, and it is yours to keep. Take the porter's peace with you toward morning. The gate is shut. There is not any more, and there does not need to be. Sleep now if you have not already. Sleep like the second sleep of the dormitory, the deep one, the one on the far side of the watch. The night office has been sung on your behalf. The watch is kept. The bounds are walked. The loaf is in the wall for whoever comes late. Somebody is awake somewhere holding the words. And tonight, for 2 hours together, it was us. Outside, over the whole valley, the snow lies still, and the stars wheel their slow wheel above the tower. Inside, the red lamp holds the dark church, and the leaven rises in the warm dark, and the hours pass from hand to patient hand. The bell counts the hours. The hours are patient. The world can wait until morning. This was worlds before morning. Good night.